Hello, all. This is Michael Hodges. I'm the community father, and I just wanted to share my vision for the AV with you because it's going to take all of us to do what I'm envisioning. Um, and for those who don't know me, I'm Michael Hodges, the community father. Community father is a brand that I've created, and under the community father, there are several components. There is the Village Project, which aims to empower parents, students, and teachers. There's Eden Institute, which trains the community to serve the community. And then there's All Hands LLC, which is the mentoring aspect of Community Father. It's um, mentoring men and boys to lead with calm, maturity, and strength. But first, I want to just introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me so that you can even understand where this vision came from. I wasn't born in the AV. I was born in Los Angeles, but spent most of my young childhood life in Pasadena, where I went to school. Um, my mom and father both pushed education in their unique ways. My mom kind of used church taking us to church and having us go to Sunday school and reading the Bible with us at night really kind of enhanced our understanding of literature and reading. And so we got plenty of practice doing that. My father was, he didn't push sports. So my brothers and I didn't really have that as an option, at least my younger brother. I have three younger brothers who did eventually get into sports. But as far as the two older boys, we weren't really encouraged in the areas of sports. My father was more so into education and the arts. So he pushed me to play the trombone, which I did, and I played through high school. And that was really a life-changing experience, especially being in the high school band at Pasadena High School, for which I have Brian Duffy to thank. He kind of sponsored me in or mentored me in as a member of the Pasadena High School Marching Bulldogs. He made sure I had everything I needed. Um, After that, uh, I went to pharmacy tech school. My mom kind of ensured that I got into pharmacy tech school. And while I was there, I remember coming home and wearing my white smock and walking through the rough neighborhood of Pasadena. And I have my younger brothers that were starting to come up. They were 10 years and older than, they were 10 years younger than me. But there was one was 10 years younger, one was 12 years, and the other was 13 years. So they were significantly younger than me, and I was in my 20s. So they were preteens and starting to hit their teens. And they were hanging with their friends in the rough neighborhood of Pasadena. And I, kind of following in my father's footstep, would pile them in my car and take them to go see a movie or something, take them to the park or something, but anything to kind of just get them off the streets from being bored. So that was really my early experience in mentorship and, as you can say, fathering. My father made sure to take us somewhere just about every weekend. He ended up having 10 children by my mom. And I believe that he didn't want to stay around the house. He worked all week long, and the weekend was his escape, and he took all of us with him. And we went to one of three places. We either went to the beach, Santa Monica Beach, or Griffith Park, where there was mountains and we hiked and all those things. And then there was the museum, the Museum of Natural History and Arts, which is located in the heart of LA. And at that time, it was free. And of course, there was the park right outside of the museum, the Rose Garden, and the Coliseum. So those were our three main hangouts. And that gave us enough, that broadened our horizon just enough to know that there was something else out there other than our little neighborhood. And as we would pile in that car and leave the neighborhood, I remember looking around me and seeing some of our friends just standing in their yard watching us as we left. And most of them didn't have fathers, but even if they did, a lot of them just didn't go anywhere, you know. And so eventually, I became a teacher. And what led to that was I had joined a ministry here in Antelope Valley. I was listening to a voice on the radio, and I was really kind of at the bottom. I had hit rock bottom. I was in a relationship that had failed. Then I tried a bunch of different things and experimented, and my life was just kind of in shambles. And I remember hearing his voice on the radio, and it sounded like a black man, and it sounded like he was from the streets, but he was preaching and he was talking about the Bible. And so I knew instinctively that I needed to be around this man. And so I drove my hoopty of a car, my 1970 Chevy Nova, out to the outskirts of town. It was 20 miles out of town, to his church, and promptly became a member. And his mentorship kind of meant a lot to me. It really helped me to find my sea legs, as it were, of being a man and developing some confidence about who I was. And while I was there, a prophet came through, and he said, "Is there a Michael here?" And he called me up, and he said, "God has called you to be a father of young men and boys." And it immediately hit and resonated with me, partly because I had kind of was doing that, and like I said, with my younger brothers, and I felt in my spirit that that was who I was, although I had never really pursued that. And so I immediately just ran with it. I decided, and so I remember there was a lady at the church, single mother who had two sons, twins, and I began hanging out with them, going over to either their place to play dominoes or taking them with me to the movies. And so I just picked up that mantle and ran with it. But I was fortunate enough to be sponsored to go to the Washington, D.C. to hear the Million Man March. And my pastor, in fact, the man who I said was like a second father, male mentor to me, he sent me because he couldn't go. So while I was there at the Million Man March, which was an experience all on its own, I honestly, being in my 20s, was looking for ways to get my party on. But I did go to a lot of the speaker events. And the main speaker event, which featured Minister Farrakhan, who was a Muslim, was speaking. And one of the things he was saying to what he figured was mostly black men, that we needed to be hands-on in the community. And that, once again, it resonated with me. And even though I was a pharmacy technician at the time, I didn't, I wasn't getting any real fulfillment out of it besides a decent paycheck. But at that time, my job in Antelope Valley had transferred me down to LA to work at USC Medical Center in the pharmacy. And so I was really starting to feel unhappy about my job. But in town, in the Antelope Valley, there was a local private Christian school called Moore Christian Academy. And I checked it out, and I understood that they needed a math teacher. And since that was a strength of mine, I took a leap of faith and I left the secure paying job of LA County to go take a part-time gig as a math teacher at Moore Christian Academy. And that was the beginning of my teaching career. And of course, because it was still in my spirit that I was a father to young men and boys, I carried that with me everywhere I went. And I took it seriously. that that's who I was. So I would go out on the playground, throw the football to the young men, and in any way that I could, I would try to be a father to the young men and boys. And that because this private school did have corporal punishment. I remember one time there was a young man who happened to be the son of a pastor that I knew, and he was just really acting up, really beside himself. And so I decided I was going to call his father. I asked his father, "Hey, is it okay if I administer some swats to your son because he's really messing up?" And his father said, "Do what you got to do." And so I promptly took him outside and gave him a couple of licks with the paddle, which was okay at the school. It was legal. And that young man turned out to be a pastor, and to this day, whenever I'm there, he tells everyone in the ministry that I administered swats to him. And it kind of gives me a proud feeling, a good feeling, just to know that he turned out to be a decent person. And so there I am, just being a father. And I eventually ended up getting a job in the Lancaster School District, thanks to the wonderful Miss Debbie Lewis, who took a chance on hiring me, even though I didn't have a credential. But I promptly began working on that, and I got that done in a couple of years. But she kept me on because she felt like the kids could relate to me, and she saw that I was serious about being a mentor and and sort of a father figure to the young people. She felt like the young people could identify with me. One time she actually allowed me to sit in an interview with her while she interviewed a teacher for a position. And this teacher came in with all kind of credentials. He was some type of an engineer, older gentleman. But after the interview, she turned to me and she said, it's a no-go for him. And I didn't understand why, but she told me it's because I don't think the kids will be able to relate to him at all. He's going to have a tough time in the classroom. And she didn't hire him. And to this day, I was wondering, why did she even do that? It wasn't like I was an administrator in training, but I believe that God just wanted me to see that for some reason. And one day I'm going to really know why. So I've worked 22 and a half years for Lancaster School District. And all of a sudden, it's been put on my heart to retire. And that happened due to a trifecta. It was like I got hit with a triple storm. I was in the middle of a discipleship, actually toward the end of a discipleship class. It was a 3-year discipleship class, which I attended once a week with a bunch of other men. It was about 10 or 15 of us that we went to early in the morning, 5 o'clock on Wednesday, one day a week. And we sat and listened to Dr. Brett, a woman of God who God had specifically said, don't forget my sons. So I sat there. So that was one thing that was happening. My wife went out and purchased a business platform called Entra under Jeff Lerner. And, she had done this several times. She was a businesswoman. And I ran away and avoided business like the plague. But when I saw how much money she put down on this, she dropped a couple of grands on this business platform. I figured I need to check this out, see what's going on. What's so important that she's willing to make this type of investment? After watching all the orientation and videos, it lit such a fire under me that I paid the balance of what she owed. And then I went and signed us up with the accounting firm that he was requesting. And then I took a step further and paid another 2,500 for uh, the firm that supports business plans. So I put all this money down, and what led me to do that was the fact that what resonated with me was he talked about how to take your purpose and turn it into something that generates revenue. And here I was still considering myself a father to the community, a father to a lot of these young children in the school. A lot of them had told me during my 20 years that I was the first black male teacher that they had seen. And living in the Antelope Valley, that was believable, you know. Maybe not so much now, but back in the early 2000s, it was believable that we were far and few in between black male teachers. So, um, listening to Jeff Lerner do one of his interviews, he had a podcast, and listening to one of his interviews where he's talking to a lady, Laura, can't remember her name, but listening to the interview, it all of a sudden it hit me in my heart that I need to retire. I need to retire because I had totally bought into the mindset of job security, get a career, retire, and you're set. And I pretty much had achieved that. I had a career, and if I just stayed long enough, I was going to be making decent money and I could just retire in comfort. But this business platform had sparked something that, coupled with the discipleship that I was sitting under, a fire was just lit. So, and I want to throw in there the fact that I had witnessed in my 22 years of teaching how the decline in behavior, and I knew something else was needed. What I was doing on the school campus was minimally effective. Something else was needed. And I felt like Entra, or this business platform, coupled with my faith in God, there was the answer. The answer lied in that. And so I took the leap of faith and I retired, even though I wasn't financially ready to do that. And that's why I retired. Now, since then, I've had a lot of time on my hand. I have been relaxing. My thank you to my daughter Linda. She taught me to, now that I've gotten off the hamster wheel, relax, because I immediately started working on a hamster wheel at home. You know, I was running myself raggedy at work, and now I was getting ready to start doing that at home, building a business. But she stopped me in my tracks and said, Dad, you need to relax, Stop with this rehearsed speech that you give people when they ask you what you're doing when you retire, and just tell them you're relaxing. So I took her at her word. But at that time, I really dug into the word. I really start really trying to develop this relationship with God and find out exactly who he was and what he wanted from me and how was I supposed to do it. And through that time spent, which I still have that habit of getting up first thing in the morning and going out and talking to him and reading his word, that these ideas came to me. Ideas of how to be a more effective father, but not just me, but how to bring others into this with me. And hence the Village Project came. Village Project came out of that. And the Village Project started online. I created a group page and I found people who were skillful in certain areas. Young lady, certified nutritionist. She was also a certified fitness trainer. One of my school teacher friends decided to come on with me. Um, a lady who owned her own cleaning business. There was a lady who was skillful and very knowledgeable in the adoption and fostering systems. Another lady was homeschooling her children. So I asked all of these people, would they like to be a contributor on this Facebook group page that I created called the Village Project? And they all agreed. And so they started doing that. At first it was everyone was contributing daily, but then we kind of, dwindled down because everybody else had other things that they were doing. But as long as it was a regular contribution, I was happy with that. From that became was I called it a podcast, even though it really wasn't. It was more of a video series, the Village Project video series, where I initially, it was just me, would talk to people in the community, and in particular parents, and find out their skills and habits so that I could share it with parents who didn't have any of that. Nicole White, who was a teacher friend of mine, who's part of the Village Project contributors, she decided to be a co-host with me on that video series. So together we started talking to people in the community and finding out their strategies and their habits, and we began to document that, you know, and then we would post them online, as a parent strategy of the day. I eventually reached out to a couple in Oklahoma who were experts in the area of mentoring, and they decided to be contributors on the site. So I felt like if I could do this online, why can't it be done in person through parent workshops? And parent workshops had always been in the back of my mind because I felt like the only way I was going to be an effective change agent was to get this message out to parents who desperately needed it. And I knew of many because I had worked around children who you could tell were not getting any type of constructive discipline, routine, nutrition, any of that. No male role models at home. So they basically were coming to school basically just raw, and it was on us teachers to try to figure out a way to teach a classroom full of kids while dealing with those few kids who just had no understanding of what the education system was supposed to be. They had no value of the educational system. And my last 10 years of teaching, I was fortunate enough to be the teacher of the in-school intervention classroom where we dealt primarily with behavior. And no matter how many strategies I came up with, no matter how much I built rapport, and me and my aide would talk with them, we kept seeing the same students over and over. And it was usually the ones who were not getting any of that stuff at home. So that's what led to me wanting to do something to improve the Antelope Valley. I went out and got the nonprofit Eden Institute for the purpose of building a school that would educate men and women in their purpose as fathers, mentors, leaders, and those things. And even other skills such as financial literacy, vocational skills, and then sending them back out into the community to serve the community. And also All Hands. I purchased the All Hands LLC because I've always thought that if I could just form a group of mature men, we can go out and be mentors to boys. And so that's another aspect of the Community Father brand. So I'm saying that to let you know that my vision is to be able to compensate experts in the area of financial literacy, fitness, health and fitness, nutrition, um, even helping parents to become teacher advocates or advocates for their own students. Um, what else is there? There's male mentors, specifically mentoring men in the area of fathers, because especially in the Black community, there's a lack of fathers. A lot of men are are really struggle with embracing their roles as fathers. So I, along with other men that are part of my team, would talk to them and embrace them and father them into being fathers. Um, there's many other aspects. There's a professional lawyer that's part of the team. So he would, you know, not only cover us legally, but also be able to give legal advice. Um, a lady who specializes in curriculum design. So we have these experts. We have all these experts that are waiting to bring transformation, teaching habits to parents and people who just who need who need to learn how to schedule, who need to learn how to develop a routine, who need to learn how to exercise regularly, who need to learn how to eat healthy, who need to learn how to meditate, who need to learn how to study and and fill their head with things that are going to propel them in whatever their purpose is. People who need to understand their purpose. So we have experts that are ready to bring about that transformation, but we need the funding to pay the experts for their time. I'm not opposed to volunteers, but if a person has taken the time to become an expert in a certain area or field, I believe that they should get what they are valuable and they should be paid for their time and their expertise, which didn't come easy. And so I'm looking for other experts. We need experts in the area of assisting parents of children who have special needs. We also need experts in the area of finding resources and helping teaching children with special needs. We need experts in the medical field. And like I said, we need funding. One other um, expert that we have on our team that I forgot to mention is a young lady who owns her own cleaning business. And she has come on and she's going to help us to help parents organize and declutter their area, their space, because a lot of times our environment, we rise or fall to the level of our surroundings. So she's going to help with that principle. So I just wanted to share that so that when you see me asking for donations, that you know what heart, where that's coming from, and the vision that you're funding. And eventually, I will get a brick and mortar or facility, but I can work in other facilities. I can go to school. We can go to schools. We can show up at schools. We can run parent workshops for the city, for school districts. We're ready. Community Father is ready to help the Antelope Valley become an empowered and transformed community. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you know who I am. I'm Michael Hodges, the Community Father. And I'll leave you with this thought. The business of building fathers really is the business of building a future. Thank you for listening.